Hello, I'm Diana Kirk. That's Princess Diana, Captain Kirk. Don't forget, okay? So while I'm reading, I want you to notice one thing. This really fucking kick-ass bracelet I got in San Antonio, because I spent a shit ton of money on it. So tonight, if everybody could give my bracelet I don't know, a clap or something, that'd be great. Thank you very much. It makes noise too, which is kind of cool. I'm going to read some stuff from my book, Licking Flames, Tales of a Half-Assed Hussy. If you don't know, I'm here to sell books, okay? So remember that, they're over there. I'm going to read some shit from the book and some other stuff. I'm starting to write my next book. It's tentatively called Sucking Wind, I think, because I kind of like the licking, sucking. I don't know, that didn't go in the right direction. I'm going to start with a little piece to kind of introduce myself. In the world of not enoughs, I am queen. I have and always will be of the mediocre brand called pennies. Never a Macy's or Neiman's, but instead just average. I am not enough of a writer to grace the pages of a literary review, and yet not humorous enough to be young and fashionable with cover art of zippered high heels. I am a corn muffin, surrounded by chocolate caramel cupcakes. I am not poly, I am not bi, I am not trans, I am not Asian or a poet or heartbroken or ill. I am a mother whose genre has worn out its welcome. I have a vagina, not available for mass consumption. I am a wife in comfortable shoes. Maybe that will become retro. But for now, I'm simply the queen of vanilla extract with a broken and browned paper seal that was fresh last decade. I am necessary, but easily replaced with fresh beans from Brazil. I have never been an end cap or shiny pink bubblegum. I will never be a butterfly or a Luna moth. I am instead the green lifesaver, the single egg in a carton, the oversized fly with orange wings, the tampon at the bottom of your purse. This is my kingdom where I thrive, where the pendulum balance is in the middle of a bank account that still has $1. I am the queen of just not quite enough, the Cabbage Patch doll who will always wish she had a silk kimono and a Harley. Thank you. So I go to a lot of readings because you're supposed to network and make a name for yourself so you can sell books. And in the process, some of them that I go to, people snap. And I always think it's really cool. So if at some time tonight you guys could all get together and like snap, I'd get street cred. And look at me, vanilla latte needs street cred. This next piece is from my book. It's called Sandwich Wrappers. It actually happened, and I changed the names of the women because apparently I think they won't recognize themselves, which is probably kind of stupid. Lori's mouth formed words, something to do with an auction, and another mama named Jenny nodded her approval. Our children ran around nearby, back and forth from the playground to the healthy picnic of hummus and carrots and grapes and almonds that was spread out over an unstained red and white checkered cloth. I heard the mamas' voices and paid attention as best I could. It had become more difficult as of late to follow all the rules. I kept telling myself I just needed to try harder, but instead found myself more interested in the small barren oak tree, the only one in the manicured park, the only oak in a park surrounded by maples. So they auctioned off 5 reusable sandwich wraps, and Jenny and I couldn't stop our bidding war. Lori is dark, tan before summer, with shiny, healthy, glowing black hair I assume comes from drinking water. Lots of it, over a lifetime. Lori's BFF Jenny sat with perfect posture from yoga on Saturday mornings, hair pulled back in a tight bun. I totally wanted those things. I hate washing out Aiden's Tupperware every day. Aiden's Tupperware. Again. I'm sure the miniature plastic tubs are filled with homemade whole grain mini muffins and figs she probably dried herself last summer from her own fucking tree. I pictured him at school with 7 Tupperwares on the cafeteria table, lids placed carefully underneath each piece, with a napkin laid out in front to catch the crumbs. I'm sure Aiden would hate to leave a mess for the custodian at school. So the woman who runs the auction just kept going back and forth while Jenny and I kept upping our bids by a quarter. Lori moved her fingers through her dazzling hair, her thin, bony hands with clear fingernails, probably from the water, too. Breathe, I told myself, breathe. I lay back on the park sheet I always keep in the trunk, stained from cherry juice and oil from something somewhere. I should have washed it over the winter, but I never seem to remember that kind of stuff. The mamas would have remembered. I look at the lonely oak. I've noticed that it never drops its brittle, dry leaves until the new ones bud out in springtime. All winter, it hangs on tightly to those leaves, maroon, mottled brown, twirling in the wind, hanging on and waiting for new life. So I offered $5.10, and then Jenny started wavering. Lori throws a wink over towards her bestie mama friend. They've begun to dress alike with their rolled-up jeans and gray cardigans, sporty sandals for hiking with off-road strollers. I saw them for sale at Village Merchant on Division, and I thought, I don't know, they're getting kind of expensive, she said. How many Wednesdays had we talked about the auction? Before the auction. Now we're talking about it after the auction. I didn't go to the auction. I didn't go to the stupid auction raising money for goats or bark chips or some paint for an outbuilding for hula hoops or balls. Nope, I read a trashy Kindle book I bought for 99 cents on Amazon. Took me 6 hours to read, 17 cents an hour. Well, finally, Lisa pounded the gavel, and I had won the lot for $5.25, Jenny declared. I'm so jealous now. They were so cute, red flannel with cars and tractors. I think she makes them for her Etsy shop. Do people really make money from their Etsy shops? Or is it a hobby like knitting that they've turned into a job description? Oh, I can't work at the auction. I've got my Etsy shop to take care of. Like, do Etsy shops make go-to Europe money? I'd like to go to Paris this summer with my husband. I want to walk at midnight, make out near a fountain, and have sex in an alley somewhere dark from foggy streetlights. Ryder, remember, we only go up the stairs and down the slide, says Lori, using her rules on my son. I stop daydreaming of raunchy sex in Paris and sit up, take notice, do my bit to show I'm paying attention. I care. Up the ladder, now down the slide. Right. That's what the good mamas do. I watch my son as he looks over at our clutch, not really hearing all of Lori's words. I shake my head, subtle, but enough for him. He knows now, today, this moment, there are rules. He's learning socialization. I'm learning socialization. We're learning to conform. Lori turns back her lustrous head of hair with her best sweet boy look on her face. Proud, she taught my son how to play the right way. So, Jen, I tried that recipe you gave me for the homemade tofu pate. It's so delicious. Mark just loves it. It's so easy. BFFs exchange recipes after teaching children how to play. Note taken. I close my eyes and remember the feta salads in Spain with eggs and green wine that we ate after hard days of work on the olive farm. Was there a recipe somewhere out there for those salads? Did it include the smoke from the bread oven nearby or the sound of German and English chatter about the best way to infuse lavender? Would they still be so good in this park right now with these mamas I've tried so hard to be like? I know, right? Jen pops a perfect green grape in her mouth, taken from more Tupperware with lids that match and fit and stack and have no spaghetti stains in them. I had to make about 10 different recipes until I felt like it was a pretty good pate. Now I put it in Aiden's lunches with rice crackers, and we have it for snacks after school with homemade pita bread. Celery salt. I heard that detail last week. The pate, it needs celery salt. That's the secret, the mamas had said. But then I asked, how do you make celery salt? Why do you make celery salt? Who made the first celery salt? The mamas had giggled at my outburst. I wonder if the first celery salt maker knew that one day they'd rule the moms at the park with this newfangled salt. I couldn't stop thinking, is celery salt supposed to be ironic? They're quiet now, the mamas in their sun hats they bought at REI for $50. Worried about skin cancer, they threw it in their basket on a whim after trying on a new pair of Keens for $100. Do they know they are celery salt? Watery celery mixed with dehydrating salts? Bidding at auction for sandwich wrappers while wearing Keens? Do they even know what I would mean if I said that? Or would it be just me again, bringing up more fodder for their Friday night double dates? When Lori and Jenny explain to their husbands how awkward I am at the park when I randomly recite a passage from Sandra Cisneros' The Mango Tree? Do they know that I know their husbands will only half listen to their conversations because they're distracted by the waitress with the giant tits? Because why not? Giant tits and a beer has got to be more interesting than celery salt. I kind of want to yell that I don't want to make sandwiches that need wrappers. I don't like sandwiches. I like Indian food with a cold Pepsi, chicken tikka with a side of pakoras like I used to eat on the sides of the dirt roads in Bengal and Rajasthan on a motorcycle before the mindless days in this park with tofu pate and homemade sandwich wrappers. Is there a mama in India right now sitting in a park with chapatis and dal listening to chatter about homemade pesto? Is she staring up at a jacaranda tree, wondering if it's native to the Himalayan basin? Does she wonder if this is it? If she's made the wrong choice, signed up for the wrong club? Is she looking for me in amongst all those yellow saris? Because I'd like to find her one day. Maybe we'll laugh together when we feed our kids idlis with peanut butter and jelly while they run up the slides and down the fucking stairs. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest, I'm not friends with those chicks anymore. So, yeah, celery salt. What is with the salt craze these days? It's crazy. I wrote this next piece for The Moth. Is anybody familiar with The Moth? Yeah. I didn't perform it at The Moth, but I wrote it for The Moth, so. I'm a natural blonde. So when 8 village women in Kenya craned their necks down to watch me squat and pee off the side of a highway outside Nairobi, I assumed it had everything to do with taking a glance at my little Marilyn Monroe. It had been a long day on buses, pumping out diesel fumes while traveling from small village to small village when we finally pulled over for a much-needed pee break. The men went to one side of the bus, and I followed the women with their yellow head wraps and matching skirts to a nearby ditch to take my own squat. Feeling a bit shy with my lack of skirting to form a perfect blinder tent around my untamed beaver, I separated from the herd farther down the ditch before dropping my drawers and letting loose an impressive amount of piss. The women had been chatting amongst themselves in Swahili on the bus and off, but the moment I dropped trow, the chatter stopped, and all eyes turned to my now performance-frightened twat. Their eyes became lasers fixated on my blonde curls, and their look in the eyes was that of fear. Suddenly shy for the first time in my 26 years, I blocked their view as best I could because I was raised to not show people my golden triangle unless it was perhaps for money or standing ovations. And these women didn't seem to be planning high fives in that direction. As soon as I was done, I pulled up my black undies and jeans and headed back to the waiting bus. But the women, they wanted more. One of the younger ones in orange-green wraparound skirt grabbed at my arm and spoke in rapid-fire Swahili as if we were the bestest of friends, as if she could just take another glance. I mean, what was she trying to say to me? If it was about the fact I didn't use toilet paper, none of them had either. I shrugged. I tried to show my confusion. Eventually, they all returned to their seats as I returned to mine before the bus driver continued our journey down the mud-packed highway. But the women still watched me with intent, and I was now feeling really self-conscious and uncomfortable. I sat up straight and tried to look unaffected. Finally, one tapped on my shoulder, and I turned in anger and glared back at her. This was getting to be too much, but when I turned, she had the softest eyes, and they appeared to be filled with a question. I needed to remember why I was and who I was and my manners. It's one thing to be standoffish riding a bus through San Francisco and quite another riding through the back roads of an African country. I didn't want to represent myself as anything but a friendly tourist. So I relaxed my shoulders. I flashed her a confident smile. She reached out for my hand and she placed a tiny burr in it. It was a small one, about the size of a sunflower seed. Her friends began to chuckle, and an older one leaned over my seat and grabbed a burr from my socks. When I followed her hand down, I noticed there were more stuck in my socks and my pants. Her seatmate pointed at me to stand up. Now there were men watching and other women farther back in the bus, but she took my elbow and pulled me upright, then pointed at the burr in my hand, then at my crotch, then at the burrs in my hand. And then I got a fucking clue. And the whole bus broke out into a roar of laughter. I could now feel the burrs stuck where sunlight had never been seen before. They left impressions in my skin that turned to a rash that lasted days, on my ankles, in my ass crack, and in my Marilyn Monroe for days. Days. Thank you. This is a piece from my book. There's my husband right there. I keep mentioning him, but he's the cute one with the hat. And he's in this story because it was a sad moment that he tried so hard to save me. But I didn't want to go to Morocco. I know, baby. And I didn't want to go to the desert or ride a stupid camel or talk to that stupid French dude. I know, here, you can use my handkerchief. It's too late, Steve, it's too late. I'm in a Muslim country covered in my own blood. I think there's stuff in the Quran about throwing rocks that merits something. It's everywhere. My husband had found me in a sand pit 100 feet from a Bedouin tent in the middle of the Sahara Desert. We had come to experience the nomadic tribal overnight package. I'd woken up just that morning, snuggled into my sleeping bag to the sound of nearby camels bickering, and felt the early twinges of my monthly cramps. Before anyone was awake in our fanciful tent, a large structure made of tree branches and blue fabric with a floor covered in Asian rugs, I'd rustled around in my day bag for a shred of pink toilet paper. We hadn't paid for the deluxe experience. You had to bring your own water, toilet paper, snacks, clothes, and all of it had to fit into one very small bag. Therefore, my Ziploc with a year's worth of OB tampons was locked up safe and secure back at the hostel. But the mighty dam had broken early, thanks probably to a 5-hour journey on a camel the day before. If you haven't ridden on the back of a camel, let me tell you, it's not like a horse. You don't straddle it and hang on with your thigh muscles. Instead, you sit any possible way you can without falling off. Cross-legged, on your stomach, on your back. The saddle is merely a platform with blankets, and it rocks you back and forth through the soft sand. I had spent most of the day trying to keep my lips from cracking and my body from falling off 6 feet in the air. My stomach muscles had worked 1,000 crunches just trying to keep me upright on that topsy-turvy saddle. Somewhere in the process, I had massaged my uterus walls and convinced it to shed early and bountifully. When I walked out of our tent in the early morning, I already knew there was no bathroom. Only miles and miles of sand bumps and dips. If I was going to drop my drawers within eyeshot of the camel herders, our guide, and the cook, I'd need to find a big dip in the sand to hide my ass, and it took 50 steps. By the time I found a place, there was blood to my knees. I'm sure most people would have assumed I'd miscarried. It looked like a scene from a horror movie. By the time I got to that dip big enough and squatted down, it was now just for the pure enjoyment of watching beetles crawl out of the sand and attack the already drying puddle of urine I'd left behind. I had no need for toilet paper. It was that arid. In seconds, it drip-dried all of my clothes, underwear, and my body. What am I gonna do? There's nothing you can do. Tie your shirt around your waist. Steve had woken up and come to look for me. He found me crying over the sand with my pants and underwear around my ankles. The blood was now dry and crisp on my legs and twat. It was hardened to my khakis, hardened like they were stiff. I read once that a woman's period is 6 teaspoons of blood. Mine was a cup. I probably needed a transfusion. The tears dried on my cheeks before they reached my lips. The snot in my nose cracked and mixed with more of my blood. I had no idea what to do. I had nothing to change into. I would have to wear my stiff clothing for the rest of the day, riding on the camel back to Zahara. I made a pad out of my husband's handkerchief, tied my only long-sleeve shirt around my waist, and headed back for leftover tagine with our guide, an arrogant 20-something from Marrakesh who did nothing but flirt with the other 2 female guests in French. The previous evening, when I'd been blood-free, I'd conversed using hand signals and loud English to find out the recipe for the chicken stew we ate for dinner. It had green olives, carrots, cardamom. The cook was kind and played along. "Is that coriander seed?" I asked. He set aside samplings of each spice for me to taste and write down in my journal. He was a Bedouin, had grown up nomadic, and had only recently given up that lifestyle to work with tourists. He came to the company with his own camel, the one I'd ridden on to get to our tent in the desert. He was carrying, unlike our guide who left in a Mercedes claiming to be much too busy for the return camel journey on our nomadic tribal overnight package. With lots of Steve's encouragement, I eventually joined our group, now stretching and drinking tea inside our blue tent. I walked awkwardly with my hands in front of me, legs crossed, and managed to settle on the carpets with a pillow on my lap. The cook handed me sweet mint tea with some bread. I'm sure dried tears on top of my facial road dust left a perfect map of my morning out in the Sahara Desert. When it was time to return to our camels, the cook helped me back onto my own personal camel. He offered me a knee to climb up and then his shoulder so I could hoist a leg over the stacked blankets. And there I sat for 5 more hours, rocking back and forth on the blanket, feeling each drip drop of my uterus lining staining the cook's Bedouin blankets. So I do interviews for some magazines which make me sound really fancy, which is why I'm telling you that. And I recently interviewed the author, Arthur Bradford, who wrote a book called Turtleface and Beyond. And he spoke down in Manzanita, and I drove down there to meet him after reading his book, which is hilarious. And I get really, really, really intimidated around authors. I could meet an actor or a musician, but authors are my gods, because when I say I read a lot, I mean I read 200 books last year. I read a lot, and I was so spellbound by his book that I was intimidated to have. Wow, that's really uncomfortable. So I was so spellbound by his book, and he's been published in McSweeney's and Esquire, so to me, he's like this really big comedian guy, and I was really excited to meet him. But what I didn't put together is how fucking hot he was. Like, so Kennedy hot. Like, oh my God, I couldn't even talk to him. Like, it was crazy. And when I finally was able to get my shit together and, like, interview him, I realized I was kind of tricked by him a little bit, because when you talk to him, he comes off like a golden retriever. Like, he's really happy and kind of slow, and you're like, this is the same guy that wrote that really cool book that won all those awards, and you won an Emmy for a documentary you did. It's really confusing to me. And then he got up on stage, and that's when I realized I had been tricked, because he was like a rock star on stage. Like, everything changed, and he totally had his shit together, and I was like, oh, that's why you won the Moth, because you know what you're doing. And so my whole point is I really, really look up to authors. And then recently I got really, really screwed over by an author, and so I got pissed, and I wrote this story. There's this type of woman, one we first met when we were much younger, maybe on the playground or on our soccer team. She invited us to something, to her house, to the mall, and you were kind of surprised she noticed you. Her hair was so shiny, her teeth so straight, and everyone just watched her, and yet she invited you that weekend, so casually. Hey, you want to meet up at the mall? So all week you thought about what you were going to wear to the mall. Maybe your white moccasins with the vest you got at Contempo, because this girl shopped at Contempo. She could wear a belt like Madonna, an off-the-shoulder sweater like Blondie. She just had it. The it we're all chasing, and maybe, just maybe, if you get close enough to it, you could have the it too. Because right then you couldn't wear an off-the-shoulder sweater, not like her, because yours always had a bra strap cutting into your skin. Maybe she'd know a trick to fix that. Maybe a special suntan lotion so your shoulders wouldn't be so day glow. And while you waited for the weekend to come, you smiled on the playground at her or around her because you had this secret nobody else knew. It was like you were in the secret club now with the girl with the teeth, the Contempo Casual Club. And so you told your mom about the girl, the it girl, and said, will you please, please, please give me a ride to the mall on Saturday? And your mom, she knew. She knew this was a big deal because she knew it girls too. So your mom with the bra straps cutting into her shoulders said, yeah, of course. But she had this look, a defeated look, a tired look. Then you waited until Friday to ask the girl with the teeth and shoulders, like ask her so coolly, just like you practiced. So where should we meet up tomorrow? And she looked at you funny, like she knew you farted in a jar once, that you stole your dad's Playboy, kissed Megan Ramirez behind the garbage cans, like she knew all your secrets. But yet you didn't run away. You boldly repeated yourself. Tomorrow at the mall, where should we meet up? And then she smiled her teeth and you breathed easier. Your pale shoulders relaxed, and she was just about to tell you, at the movie theater, silly. And she couldn't wait, and she was going to show you how to wear a belt, and everything was going to be okay. By Monday, this whole girl thing was going to be fixed because she had the answers, and you waited, and she was watching your face so filled with glee. Then she did that thing. She crossed her arms and informed you she made plans with Samantha. I'm so sorry, I forgot about our plans. I'm going to the movies at the mall with Sammy. And you were fine. You turned away, and it's when the music montage started in the movie of your life. Some sad Tears for Fears song came on while you acted cool because it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, malls are stupid, and she's stupid, and they're all stupid, those girls and those women, because they're still around, you know? Let's meet up for coffee this weekend, they say. I love your shoes, they say. But you know better now because they keep looking over your shoulder while they adjust their belts before they cross their arms and say, I'm just so busy these days. And now you know it's not your music movie montage moment, but theirs instead. And you don't turn away. After you cross your arms across your chest and you can hear her music montage, it's kind of a speed freak techno bump. Her staring at herself in a mirror, readjusting everything, then her having drinks with cool people, doing lines of coke with cooler people. But you can really see her eyes, the eyes that never learned that cool comes from cold. She's looking over your shoulder the whole time, trying to find her dancing carrot, her better time, her better people, never having time to see her maxed out credit cards, her yellowing cigarette fingers, and her music montage makes you feel so tired, like bone tired. So you pull down your sweater off one shoulder where the bra cuts into your skin and the moles stand proud, and you take a deep breath instead. Then a deep sigh, in and out. Whew. Bullet dodged. So, thank you. So I'm really proud of this next story because it has been rejected 7 times. It has been rejected by the Rumpus for being too aggressive. It has been rejected by the Good Men Project for being too sexual. And it has been rejected by 5 editors at the Jewel who finally just decided it's too offensive. So I'm going to put it in my next book. This is called I'm So Sorry About My Vagina. Dear Facebook commenter, I read your words a few weeks ago on my page. Remember when you commented on my post about taxing tampons and pads and women's uncomfortable underwear? You said, I'm so happy I don't have to listen to my ex-wife talk about her periods and leaky stuff anymore. I was like, oh my God, how horrible for this guy to have to hear about my problems on Facebook after a divorce. Well, I'm writing you a private message today because I just keep thinking about you a lot. I mean, dang, I'm so sorry I brought up Aunt Flo. It sounds like it was a trigger for you. In fact, I thought about you yesterday when I was at this fancy work event in my 4-inch Louboutin heels that make my calves look super sexy, but after 15 minutes feel like I dropped a cement bag on my toes. I also wore my expensive bra, the one that keeps me from breathing, but is so worth it because when work requires fancy, it's time to bring the girls out. And I think a couple of your buddies were at this event, weren't they? Aren't Phil and Tom our mutual friends? Middle-aged, comb-overs. Phil looks like maybe too much scotch on weeknights. Tom kind of looks 30 weeks pregnant with twins. No? You sure? I swear that's why I agreed to friend you last year after that convention in Las Vegas with the teenage girls giving out free body shots as a promotion for Oak Mortgage. But anyway, I thought about you at this work thingy today because your buddies, Tom and Phil, they were knee-deep in conversation when I tried to hand them my business card while also microhemorrhaging. We were all standing next to the latte machine. That's what they were serving at this meet and greet, lattes and bagels with schmears. I never got a bagel because I had to keep running to the ladies' room to change my plug. I was so worried about annoying Phil and Tom with my bloody crotch. I ended up just leaving early because I also ran out of Super Plus Plus tampons and my panty liner was soaked. I mean, I should have known. It was my second day, and that's hemorrhage day. We all know this. When us ladies do what you do at work while attempting to catch a quart of blood onto a thumb-sized piece of cotton shoved deep into our vaginas. I mean, what would happen if I leaked? Poor Phil and Tom didn't need to see any of that. Plus, they seem pretty busy and no need of stupid distractions. I mean, they were talking about really important stuff, like this week's news about AIC's 80% investment portfolio being offered at a holy crap, is that really only 6.5% for commercial? Holy shit. And then when I got home from work, I thought about you again when I sat on the toilet because blood and clots were like pouring out of my lady bits. Pouring. Like you could hear them plopping into the toilet. So much blood. Of course, right after that happened, I blacked out and I hit my head on the tiled wall next to me. Well, let me tell you, that doesn't happen very often these days because can I get a hallelujah for those over-the-counter $54 progesterone patches so nobody at work knows I'm hot flashing my way through lunch, right? I'm just saying, I totally get it. How annoying would that have been to find your wife laying on the bathroom floor, bleeding out of her nether regions, with walnut-sized clots hanging off her carefully trimmed pubes? Seriously, walnut-sized. To think she talked to you about that stuff? What a hag. And then last night, again, I felt so bad for you and really just guys in general. Here it was in the middle of the night, and my poor husband had to sleep right next to me while I night sweated and bled all over our mattress. Right? I mean, that's what you're talking about. My husband had to sleep while I changed my clothes and harpoon at least 3 times. Poor guy. So here I am today at work, a little bit woozy and definitely in need of a steak, but concerned that I might have upset you a couple of weeks ago. I think I was insensitive to your needs, and I bet other men could relate to how awful it is to listen to all of our whining about migraines and cramps and crying over a movie. I mean, really, who needs to hang out with an anemic space alien? I know the answer, nobody, right? So I feel as though I should thank you today. Now that I can see all of this clearer from your insightful comment on my Facebook post. And on behalf of your ex-wife and women in general, thank you for putting up with all this menstrual, estrogen, progesterone, bleeding, pussy talk women overshare with menfolk. I'm sure it's been a difficult time, and I personally wouldn't want to make things more complicated for you. So thanks for stopping by, and I just wanted to say, I am so sorry about my vagina. So there's a favorite story in my book, and I wasn't going to read it to you because I'm kind of a bitch, but I'm going to read it to you because it's a really fun story. It's probably the most popular story in the book. You'll know why. Drink. Talk amongst yourselves. All right. There was a really young girl here. She's gone. That's good. Mike T. and his giant cock were in my art class, freshman year, third period. He'd agreed to help me shed my virgin stigma as we were making silkscreen Van Halen t-shirts. I just want it gone. I don't care how. I'm so tired of thinking about it. I'll do it, he said. I'll pop that cherry of yours. We were to meet at midnight at the park near my house. I shaved and picked out my best pink undies with matching bra and sprayed Love's Baby Soft on my neck. Mike may have been a sure thing, but his reputation as a star wrestler required some effort on my part. I felt lucky he even offered. At 11:30 p.m., I started wavering about my ponytail, my mint gum, my pink sweats. Maybe I'd be sexier if I didn't wear undies. Enough. I finally told myself in my dresser mirror before climbing out my bedroom window. The park was empty and semi-dark at the end of my cul-de-sac with one simple street light at the sidewalk. I could see Mike clearly. He leaned against the slide, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He'd wisely chosen a tank top, my late-night hormones focused on his cut arms and his fresh shower smell. Hey, I mumbled, kicking bark chips around my flip-flops. I heard his deep breath coming towards me, and then his tongue was down my throat, and he was pushing me back against the cold metal monkey bars. I thought there would be some small talk, but instead there were just hands. He was a good kisser. Well, an aggressive kisser. He was experienced, I reminded myself. My sweatpants were already getting pushed to the ground, my shirt getting pulled up. I was sure I wanted to do this, but I was beginning to question his speed. Hey, stop, I said, pushing him back and looking out into his disappointed eyes. I mean, don't stop. I mean, just slow down for a second, okay? He looked at me, starving, but he stopped. On my third deep breath, I kissed him this time, a gentle brush of my lips against his. I took it slow, and I bravely ran my hand down into his shorts where I found his giant bulge. Giant. It wasn't my first time touching one or my second. I knew just enough to understand his was quite possibly the largest cock I would ever touch. My sexual instincts began to yell, there's no way that will fit inside me. The sheer size of it was more than could fit in my hands. I couldn't reach around it inside his shorts. I couldn't remember anything I'd learned in 8th grade summer camp. My mind was a blank with fear. What had Cosmo told me to do? Was I supposed to squeeze it? Mike's tongue was beginning to overpower my mouth again, suffocating me. I gasped for breath while his stubbly sophomoric face scratched against mine, his fingers pinching my nipples too hard, his body pushing my hand more and more against his giant penis. Everything sped up too fast, the grabbing and squeezing, and now his hand was in my pink panties, his fingers shoving inside me when it all just stopped. His arm muscles went rigid under my hand. I just sat there squeezing his dick, frozen in place, scared to move. And that's when I noticed my hand down his pants was covered in goo. The shamed expression when he pulled away from me said it all. It was over. I felt like somebody had dumped a bucket of cold water on my head. Oh my God, I said, searching for an invisible towel to wipe my hand on. Cosmo didn't tell me what to do now. What does a person say when this happens? I'm sorry? My sweats were around my ankles, my shirt around my shoulders, and a shot of jizz dangled on my fingers a block from my house where my parents slept. It was a school night. Dear God, it's me, Diana. What do I do now? Mike's giant cock shriveled like a slug in his underwear. He kept staring at the ground, his giant arm muscles twitching, the awkwardness choking both of us, my virginity still intact. Thank you. So, one more piece and let's have pie, shall we? I'm fully convinced and have decided to blaze straight on through with the long gray braid flapping in the wind that the grace I search for and have seen only a few times in my life lives comfortably in a hair-thin slip between gratitude and bitterness. When a tribal woman in Africa with her shaved head and seed beads washed my hair from a hand pump in the savannah, we had a moment between our eyes that was nothing short of a divinity. I could see her 50 years of lost babies and lost brothers, her forehead marked as a female circumcision warrior. She could see my entitled life I wore on my hips and ring finger, and yet we held onto one another's arms and pumped that water and bathed our bodies and giggled through her tongue clicks and my giddy slang and my silly blonde cooter, and she sang me a song when she combed my hair. We never checked for hyenas behind us, not once. No, we were wrapped in a temporary cocoon of a graceful timestamp, a fragile bubble that could have popped with one word, one assumption, either way, on this teeter-totter of a very intense life. Thank you.